So, with the next few weeks of the snooker season really only consisting of qualifiers, I thought now was as good a time as any to do a video which I've been thinking of doing really since the World Championships, and that is to look at the future of the sport, or more accurately, the future of the Snooker World Championship. Now, going back to sort of April, May, even though we had a tournament that was full of talking points on the table, the 17 days of the World Championship this year did feel a tad overshadowed by conversations off the table about the World Championship and how long it would be staying at the crucible for. Now, at the time, I didn't really feel like making any videos on the subject, purely because I didn't want to spoil my enjoyment of the tournament as it was happening by talking about something that really did frustrate me and continues to frustrate me, and that was about the potentially limited amount of time we have left at the home of the sport. Now, talks of the World Championship moving from the crucible is nothing new. In fact, ever since the early 2010s, there have been numerous occasions where the future of the tournament have been mentioned, with, the consistent background rumblings that it may one day end up in China. Those conversations were muted slightly back in 2017, when a new 10-year deal was agreed with Sheffield City Council to keep the tournament at the crucible until at least 2027, which will be its 50th year anniversary. But the debate has again reared its ugly head this year. But this time around, the risk seems far more real than it ever has done. And the main reason for that is there is no longer the backing from those in charge of the sport that the crucible will remain. If we go back to 2017, Barry Hearn, the former World Snooker chairman, was pretty insistent that he would never ever allow the World Championship to move from the crucible. Suddenly this year it was a very different tone from him, as every single interview he'd done during the tournament was him putting on a very bullish stance that ultimately money talks, and if another country, another city or another venue comes along that's bigger and offers more money, then the sport will ultimately follow. And I think that is the worst part about this, is that it all boils down to money. And it's not only snooker but sport in general. Anyone listening who's also a football fan has likely seen their club be taken over by a businessman who doesn't care one bit about the club or the sport, but simply see it as an investment opportunity to increase their own net worth. And quite honestly, fans of pretty much every sport nowadays will have seen this as well. People in charge simply do not care about the fans anymore, and they never will, and there is no point in them even trying to pretend like they do. There was even a segment on the BBC where Ken Doherty was talking to Barry Hearn and was trying to say things like, surely there are some things more important than money. To which Barry simply replied with no.
History and the nostalgia of the crucible, does that not mean something? Aren't there things in life that money cannot buy, and that's...
Now look, congratulations Barry, you're successful with a shed load of money which you've earned, and congratulations to you, good on you. But to us fans, there are definitely more important things, and keeping the World Championship here is, I would guess, at the top of most of our shared agendas. The worst part about all of this, though, is that Barry Hearn isn't even chairman anymore. In fact, he has no more than an advisory position in Matchroom Sport. His son, Eddie, is the head of Matchroom, with Steve Dawson taking the reins as head of World Snooker back in 2021 when Barry Hearn stepped down. And the question I ask is, where on earth were they last spring when all of this information was coming out? I certainly didn't see them on BBC or Eurosport or any other news platform talking about this change, which is such a big change in the sport that they're supposedly the head of. And even though I don't use Twitter anymore, I'd be willing to wager that they didn't put out a single tweet either. At least with Barry, no matter how much I disagree with his stance, he at least had a care for the sport, going all the way back to the 80s as manager of Steve Davis. Eddie Hearn and Steve Dawson, though, not a care in the world about this sport. You'll see Steve Dawson posing during trophy presentations here and there, but that's it. Eddie, I think I've seen him in maybe one snooker-related photo last season, and that was when he was announcing the big money Saudi Arabia's Masters tournament. Shocker. Something else that really irked me when all of this was coming out was how plainly obvious it was that Barry kept trying to shift the blame of this onto Sheffield City Council, who for almost 50 years now have hosted this tournament of ours amazingly well. But now suddenly, because they can't magically just create a 3,000 person venue in the next couple of years, It's their fault that snooker is forced to look elsewhere. And again, that is an absolute con. They'll also tell you that moving to a venue with a much bigger capacity will give more opportunity for fans to watch the sport live. And don't think for 1 second that will stop them hiking up prices so much so that the regular folk like you or me can't afford a ticket, whilst their ultra-rich mates sit in the comfortable VIP seats. Again, it is a money-centric decision. Don't be fooled about anything else. And to throw another sort of football-related analogy into the mix, I can assure you Arsenal fans who are old enough to go to Highbury will tell you how much better their experience was at Highbury compared to the Emirates. The same for West Ham fans and the old Upton Park. Increasing the size of a venue doesn't equate to better quality. The whole reason the Crucible is so special is because of the small, claustrophobic atmosphere that it creates. It's a big part of the test of being a world champion, is to cope with those conditions. Now, there will be people like Barry that will say we simply need to move with the times, and to an extent I would agree with that somewhat, but moving with the times does not mean you need to throw away tradition. 2027, like I said earlier, will be the 50th anniversary of the World Snooker Championship being at the Crucible Theatre, and the legacy that has created over that time will not be replicated anywhere else. Just any time you think of the Crucible, you will think of so many magical moments. Too many to even list here. And wherever they try and take the tour, whether that's China, whether it's Saudi Arabia, whether it's somewhere else in England, no matter where they go, they will not be able to replicate what's happened over the past 50 years of this sport. Another counter-argument that I see a lot is that the United Kingdom already has too many tournaments, and honestly, that is something that I do completely agree with. For a supposed world tour, the sport is far too limited to the shores of the UK. Last season, there were 22 tournaments on the professional circuit, 15 of which were staged in either England, Scotland, Wales or Northern Ireland. A further 4 were in China, 2 in Germany, and then 1 more in Saudi Arabia. And when said out loud, that is really grim reading for the sport. If we can only host tournaments in 7 countries in one season, how on earth can we be deemed to be a global sport? And just continuing on this slight tangent for a second longer, I would completely support the idea of reducing the number of tournaments in the United Kingdom and either moving them or replacing them completely with tournaments elsewhere. England does not need to have the 3 Triple Crown events, the 4 ITV events, the English Open, the British Open, and even the mixed doubles event. We should be looking more into mainland Europe. We used to have several European PTC events sort of in the early 2010s. So we know there is plenty enough interest to host tournaments in places like Poland, Bulgaria, Hungary, just to name a few. I think Thailand deserves more than just a 6-word world championship when you consider the list of talent, both in the men's and the women's game, that has come from there recently. Can we try and get snooker back in Australia? Could we even try to look towards North America for the first time, in the States or Canada? This I do believe is necessary if we consider ourselves to be a global sport. And even if that meant the UK was left with, say, just the Triple Crown events and the Home Nation events, so be it. But with all that said, there is only one change that I cannot get behind, and that is leaving the Crucible. There is too much attachment there. Imagine Wimbledon moving, or seeing the Golf Masters move from Augusta. You can't, and it's the exact same principle for the World Championship. If it was a story where either the Crucible or Sheffield could no longer continue, then as hard as it would at least be a pill that I could swallow. But both of those parties are still keen to keep the tournament. It is simply that the men behind the curtain are following money rather than prestige, and that's the part that will never sit right with me. Anyway, as always, let me know in the comments what you think. I'm aware that I've been pretty preachy in this video, and in fact, you could all disagree with me and think a move from the Crucible is the right option. But yeah, the whole conversation made me very uneasy during this year's World Championship, and I am now extra motivated to make sure that I'm in Sheffield for the next few years. Even if I can't get tickets, I just want to be there, sort of around the Crucible, the Winter Gardens, just to soak in the atmosphere and be around snooker fans. Because we really may only have a few more years left of this amazing venue.